We all respond very differently to trauma. And the problem is if you take that response in today's life and you respond inappropriately and you realize and you acknowledge at that point in time that it's making you unhappy and it's affecting those relationships around you. What I want to do for you today is explain what is the behavior that manifests that's a result of trauma or some traumatic event that you experienced as a child, or either as a young infant or as you were growing up. I want you to identify those patterns within yourself. Once you're able to identify those patterns, then you can start doing something about it. I'm going to give you some tips on what you can do to change that response, that behavioral manifestation that's now become part of who you are. It's been ingrained with you because of some traumatic event that happened many years ago. But you do have the choice. You have the choice today to change, to take back control, to take ownership of your life and to live the life that you want, where you feel fulfilled and you have great relationships. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to help you identify patterns of a trauma response. Then the second part, I'm going to describe what the trauma responses look like. And the last part of this video is going to talk about how you can change it, what you can do differently to get a different outcome. So the first thing we need to do is we need to become aware of our patterns, the way we typically behave. So how do we deal with it? There's 4 steps. First thing is you need to identify those patterns, the way that you typically behave and react and respond to things. We identify this by self-reflecting. You know within yourself if something didn't go well and it didn't go right. And a nice way to do this is actually to journal. Journaling is actually brilliant. It's a very good way for you to reflect on the day, to have a look at the impact you're having on those people around you. And is it serving you? Are the behaviors that you're doing and the way you're acting serving you? And use other people to be your gauge in terms of, is this a relationship you really want, where you feel you express yourself authentically? Another way is to use people as a mirror. Identify the things that you see within them. I have the expression and I say, if you spot it, you've got it. So pick up the things you like and things you don't like in others. And that gives you a nice gauge in terms of the behaviors that you can take back control and you can modify yourself. And the next point is ability to reframe. This comes in being conscious and being absolutely cognitively aware that you have the choice. You know how you're behaving. You're now going to choose what you're going to do differently. And a nice way to do this is to actually, at the end of the day, once you've identified it, think how you could have responded, how you would have preferred to have responded. And it's nice to practice that in a safe environment where you're sitting alone in your own thoughts and you're thinking about the day. Try and imagine yourself as though you're reacting and responding in a different way, behaving in a way that you haven't behaved in the past, and getting the desired outcome that you want. It's your responsibility. You have no control of people around you. What is within your control is the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you behave. So if you're wanting to get a different outcome, you're the person who has the ability to become more skillful. You can adapt and change your behavior. Learn to start communicating more effectively. Communication skills are actually brilliant, especially people who've had traumatic experiences. They're unable to express their needs. They're unable to deal with conflict effectively. They're unable to assert what their needs are. So start becoming the master. Go on courses, learn how to deal with conflict, learn how to communicate effectively, and practice, practice, practice. So look at the word responsibility, what it means. You have the ability to choose how you are going to respond. Now we're going to talk about the 4 trauma responses. I'm going to explain what the behavior is that actually manifests itself for each of the 4 trauma responses. The first trauma response is fight. This is where you have those angry outbursts, where you just feel as though you're wanting to control and you get frustrated and you just flip the lid, so to speak. You become a bully, you become defensive, ready to attack and fight with anybody, and you can feel that sudden rush of blood to the head. That is a trauma response we may not be aware of. But if you find yourself bulldozing and creating conflict, you may be responding from a traumatic event, because that is the fight response to trauma. The next trauma response is the flight. Now, what do we mean by flight? Often these are people who are over-analytical, you overthink things, analysis paralysis, you distract yourself by throwing yourself into work so you can become a workaholic, trying to forget any sort of issues or any feelings that may emerge. You land up being in a situation where you avoid dealing with the feelings. You're fleeing from it. Sometimes you may also experience panic attacks. That is a typical trauma response. Also, individuals who are very, OCD, perfectionistic, that is a way of digressing the pain or the trauma at hand. You're trying to occupy yourself with the current moment, deep-seated, unconsciously. There's some trigger, some response that's making you wanting to actually flee from the emotion that's presenting itself. So that's a typical flight response to trauma. Then we get to the freeze situation. The freeze situation is exactly what it says. You land up freezing, and we're not willing to make decisions. We second guess ourselves all the time. We also may become numb, devoid of any sort of emotion. It's safer just to remain absolutely neutral. What we could typically do as well in this situation is we try and isolate. You feel as though if you remove yourself from the person, you can remove yourself from the feeling, the situation. You're wanting to get away from any form of discomfort that's existing in your body. An extreme behavioral response is when you dissociate. Now that could be that you actually switch personalities, or you land up actually not even being aware that you're switching from this persona to another persona. That's an absolute extreme response to something very traumatic that's happened in your life. This is something you don't want to have in your adult life. As an adult, you have the ability to make decisions. You don't need to freeze as an adult. 4, this is the last traumatic response. You'll end up making yourself smaller. You'll end up becoming codependent, living to please everybody else, and your needs become insignificant. You have no boundaries. People can say and do what they want. You don't even have a form of identity. And many situations start overwhelming you. You feel as though this is just too much to bear or too much to cope with. Those are the 4 trauma responses. Let me know in the comments which one of those 4 you identify with the most. Let me hear about your experience. I respond to every comment, so I will respond to you. So once you've identified the patterns that you are associating yourself with, reflect on it. There are many ways of reflecting. Go see a psychologist, go get some help. The journaling, as I spoke about. Speak to somebody close to you. Then reframe it. Think about how you would want to respond. How are you going to react in the future differently? And take responsibility. You have the choice to choose what things you're going to do, but it starts with the right mindset. You need to want to change. So if you're a fighter, the best thing you can do is to put a guard in front of your mouth. Be careful what you say and listen. Focus on trying to understand the other person first. You want to understand how they're feeling and why they're upset. Put your own needs aside. Switch off that inner voice that's wanting to go back and fight. Turn it off and focus on the person right there in front of you. If you find yourself being one of those who's in a flight situation, that's how you typically respond. Stop. Just allow yourself to feel what you feel. And just be in the present moment. Feel it. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. You're so used to trying to ignore that discomfort or those feelings that you're trying to escape them all the time. The more you feel it, the quicker it's going to dissipate. So what you need to do is you need to start facing your problems head on, because they're going to keep on perpetuating. It's going to come back. If it's not this person, it's going to come back in another person or another situation. The sooner you start addressing it, and as soon as you confront what it is that you're feeling, the sooner you're going to start feeling so much more fulfilled. If you find yourself in the freeze behavioral response, allow yourself to feel what you want to feel, and then choose, make a choice. Think it through. Imagine how you want to respond. Start getting yourself into the future situation and think to yourself, right, how do I want to be observed? How do I want to feel in this situation? And visualize yourself manifesting that behavior and actually behaving in that way. The fawn response. This is an important concept for you to know who you are. Know what you want. Know what your needs are. And very important is to gain as many skills as possible to be able to express yourself. And practice it. The more true you are to yourself, the more comfortable you'll start being in the situation. You'll learn to express yourself more freely. So ultimately, if you are aware of the way you have been behaving and consciously make the choice on how you're going to act and how you're going to behave, then you're no longer operating from a traumatic experience or response situation. So consciously make decisions on how you're going to act, how you're going to behave. And if you feel the need to go and ask for help, go for it. It's an absolute strength to go and seek out other people's opinions or to seek help from a professional. This is when you know you're growing, when you're trying to increase your knowledge, your skills, and your behavioral set. Thanks so much for watching up to this point. I really can't wait to hear all of your comments, and hopefully I'll see you join the subscriber list. I will see you in the next video.